All right, guys. So we've got about 30 people, 40 people on the line here today, and basically, this is Search Engine Journal Live, and so a couple people have been sending in some questions, and I just wanted to get through them today. So our questions today, and by the way, you can try typing in some questions in on the side if you have anything, any questions about pay-per-click advertising or search engine marketing, by all means, go ahead and ask. So the first question comes in. It says, "What do you consider when creating an ad?" All right. Well, that's pretty easy. Generally, we're shooting for some kind of a high click-through rate, right? Because if the click-through rates of the ads are really low, then these ad platforms won't even bother showing them, and it'll be really, really expensive. And so the things that I consider are the targeting and the creative. So what are we targeting? Are the keywords very specific or commercial in nature? And also the creative. Is this just some boring ad that doesn't really say much about you or your business, or is it really like a exciting, emotionally charged ad that people are going to want to click on like crazy? All right, next question comes in. It says, how do you decide which advertising platform to use? And basically, that's a very easy question. It has to do with the type of your business. Businesses such as dentists or movers or florists, where there's kind of a steady state demand for these types of products and services. I think that's obviously more geared towards search, because people they kind of know what they're looking for, they just don't know where to get it. But a lot of times you've got types of businesses where that's not the case. So for example, business to business, software applications, for example, if you're creating something new, then it's possible that people aren't searching for this kind of stuff because it's so new, no one knows to search for it. And so in that case, you're selling to demographics, like in terms of certain types of people with job titles or interests, and in which case generally Facebook is substantially more powerful for that type of targeting, where the keyword doesn't work. Next question is coming in. It says, what are the signs that make for a great PPC landing page? Well, that's easy. It has to do with the conversion rate. Like, are people actually buying or signing up for the thing that you're offering, right? Because if your conversion rate is like 1 or 2 or 3%, basically what that means is that 98, 99, or 97% of the people who are viewing this offer are not taking you up on it. And so those are what I call donkeys. The donkey landing pages with 2 or 3% conversion rates. There's a lot of people who say like, oh, you need to just make the landing page more pretty, use a better image, better messaging, and sure, that's important. But generally, what I find is that if you're stuck in kind of like the 1 or 2% range, the market is telling you something. It's saying what you're selling isn't all that interesting. So one of the best ways to fix this is actually to change what you're selling. Like, just really think about what would it take for you to offer something that instead of 1 or 2% converting, could it be like 8, 9, or 10% converting, which is I call those unicorns, and by making it so much more valuable or so much more interesting or compelling. That's how I can tell kind of between a donkey or a unicorn landing page. It's based on the conversion rate, right? Because ultimately it's all about the outcomes as opposed to kind of our own biased views of how great we think the thing is. Obviously, marketers are very biased, so they think everything they do is great, but in reality, there's great stuff and there's not so great stuff. All right, next question is coming in. It says, how would you handle a very limited budget in high cost per click industries? Okay, this is happening more and more these days because pay-per-click advertising, it's not cheap, it's not new, it's been around for 20 years. So chances are there's a lot of advertisers who might be bidding on whatever keyword that you're interested in. And so if you have a very, very low budget and the cost per clicks are like $20 or more, well, then basically you're going to have to be more picky. What I mean by being more picky is I'd suggest using something called RLSA. RLSA is remarketing for search advertising, and so what that says is you're going to target people who are searching for the keywords that you're interested in, but also who've visited your website recently, like in the last 90 days or 30 days or whatever you decide. Basically, that's your low-hanging fruit right there. If you target the people who not everyone who's searching for the keywords you're interested in, but just the people who've are familiar with your brand and have checked you out recently. I think that's going to be, if you have a limited budget to spend it there, because those are the ones who are most likely to buy your stuff, right? People with brand affinity, pre-existing brand affinity, are 2 to 3 times more likely to click on your ads, and 2 to 3 times more likely to actually buy the stuff that you're selling. So when you multiply that through, it's like an order of magnitude more efficient. Now, of course, the challenge with this approach is that it's hard to spend a ton of money on RLSA, because 2 things have to happen. They have to visit your site, and they have to search for the keywords that you're interested in. Basically, that doesn't happen all that often. But in this particular case, when the user is saying, they have very limited budget to spend, that's the solution. In fact, even if you're not doing search advertising, I think you're crazy to not at least do RLSA, because basically you're just trying to capture the people who've already expressed an interest in your business, and that's kind of the best few dollars you could ever spend, in my opinion. All right, so our next question has to do with the mobile trend and how it affects your PPC strategies. Well, it's definitely a kind of a big deal. Something like 62% of the searches in Google are now mobile, versus on Facebook, it's something like 80% of the usage is mobile. So, I mean, it's I don't think it's a great strategy just ignoring mobile and only doing desktop, because you're just missing out on substantially most of the ad impressions, and so if it definitely helps for certain business types. Like I find, like local businesses or certain types of businesses where they just lend themselves better to local advertising on mobile. But in other industries like B2B, there it's like still mostly desktop. Basically, one strategy that we do is we push content offers, so trying to get people to read your blog, etc., through mobile ads. So then we can tag them with a cookie, and then you can remarket to them on desktop. Try to get them to sign up for your consultation or your product offer, and basically, that's kind of a nice way of combining the mobile and desktop. Kind of creating the brand affinity through mobile, and then trying to close the deal on desktop. All right, our next question coming in here, it has to do with how do you ensure that PPC metrics and tracking are in place and are working effectively? This is a huge issue with pay-per-click advertising accounts. You see, obviously I love pay-per-click advertising because it's so measurable and there's so many actionable insights, but more than 50% of the time the conversion tracking isn't even set up, and of the 50% of the time that people do set up conversion tracking, probably half of those times there's like glitches in the matrix, kind of little issues that have to do with conversion tracking. Oops, like we're tracking the wrong things, or it was improperly set up, or even worse is when it's set up properly, but there's like bots and fraudulent activity happening, that are bots filling out forms that appear to be legit, that kind of stuff. So I've seen this all the time. So basically, what I would do to ensure that these PPC metrics are being tracked correctly is basically tracking the very, very bottom of the funnel, which is revenue, like product sales or bookings to your dentist, or whatever product and service you're selling. Like from time to time, just checking to see that the metrics in the Facebook advertising ad platform or Google ad platform are actually matching up to the records being generated in your accounting system or in your bookings system. Because if these are off, then there's something wrong. Another question is how do you ensure so what should you do when your paid search account goes stagnant? And of course, this is a huge issue. All the time I see this happen where a new search manager comes in and does a lot of changes to the account, and they see a nice uplift, but then that tends to generate diminishing returns as they sort of build out the account, and it's like pouring concrete, and the concrete kind of sets, and it's very difficult to then make big changes to the account because everything's kind of built out the way that they wanted it to. And so, what do you do when you reach this kind of plateau and in your search advertising account, and what should you do to make sure that you're still generating returns? And basically, what I would be doing is kind of peer account management. So just call up a friend, someone that you trust, and maybe you could have them review your account with a fresh pair of eyes and new ideas, and maybe you could return the favor, look over their account, kind of thing. And because the challenge is you really you don't know what you don't know, and just getting a second opinion, in a kind of friendly way, I think it's incredibly valuable. I get called in to do all sorts of these just spot audits and stuff like this to look for ideas. Now, not all these ideas are going to work, but even if one in five ideas work, that's a big win. All right, so we're almost at the end of our conversation here. One question has to do with bid management and budget, especially budget management strategies. It's like, how do you manage like a budget across different platforms, different ad platforms? Basically, what I would do is focus on the ad targeting. So the way that I look at it is remarketing is really super valuable. So, if you're thinking of your budget, if you've got $1,000 to spend, spend as much as you can on display remarketing, social remarketing, and search remarketing. That's going to be the best bang for your buck, and you want to make sure that 100% of the money that you can possibly spend is being spent on remarketing first. Because that's going to have the best conversion metrics. Then if you have any more money to spend in your budget, you kind of move up, kind of climbing up the tree here, going after the low-hanging fruit, and now we're going to go after kind of the middle-hanging fruit. So that would be things like doing similar audiences, or keyword targeting with associated demographic targeting, that kind of stuff. You're going to spend a little bit more there, and then if you have even more money to spend, only then at that time should you go after just generic audience targeting on Facebook ads, or generic keyword targeting on Google AdWords. So think of it as kind of like a three-layer cake. The best one is remarketing, and then followed by similar audiences, followed by just generic interest and keyword-based targeting. We're down to my last question here on the list for today, and the question is, how should you run campaigns side by side along other digital advertising initiatives, such as display ads, such as mobile ads and search ads, to ensure the best results? So the question is about integration of different paid channel campaigns, for example, search, display, and social ads. And basically what I think is that these things go in really well together. I think of search as being kind of the bottom of the funnel, so that's you're kind of capturing the demand that you've managed to create for the products and services that you're selling. But search doesn't actually create new demand; it just harvests the existing search demand that exists in the market. And so, what you should be using the social and display ads is to generate demand. So you're targeting different types of demographics, different types of interests and behaviors, and trying to get them all jazzed up about your product offerings, so that when they do search, you'll be able to convert that into leads and sales when they search on Google search. So I think you need both social and and display ads to generate demand, and then search to capture and harness that demand that you've created. All right, so that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us for another Facebook Live session with Search Engine Journal. Fantastic group of people and fantastic publication. Highly recommend that you like their page and subscribe to their blog. All right, thanks. Have a good day.